They say motherhood is a journey, but let's be honest, sometimes it feels more like a roller coaster with no seatbelt. I bet you're like me, wondering why babies, or teens in my case, don't come with instruction manuals. Welcome to This Incredible Mom Life, the podcast that celebrates the beautiful chaos, quiet wins, messy moments, and everyday miracles of being a mom. I'm your host, Dummy, wellness coach, mom of 3 boys, and a passionate believer that you don't have to live at the mercy of PMS, burnout, or exhaustion. Join me every week as we hear the craziest and most unbelievable mom stories. I'll be sharing the huge accomplishments and triumphs of both our moms and their kids. We'll giggle, cheer on the kids, and discuss obstacles and lessons learned along the way. If you are struggling to be the best mom you can be, how open-minded are you to booking a free call with me? You don't have to live at the mercy of your cycle, and you definitely don't have to do it alone. Give yourself permission to let me be part of your support system. I believe that you weren't meant to just survive motherhood. You were meant to thrive in it.
Welcome back. Today I have a special supermom with me. Nicola Farndell is a women's health and menopause specialist, keynote speaker, and founder of Life Now Coaching. After 2 decades in senior leadership at Nike, Nicola hit burnt out, anxiety, and perimenopause head on, and turned that experience into a mission to help midlife women reclaim their energy, confidence, and well-being with clarity and compassion. Through her reset method, built on mindset, movement, nutrition, sleep, and stress, Nicola helps high-achieving women ditch the surface fixes and create habits that genuinely last. She also works with organizations across sport, law, and finance to make menopause and women's health a cultural priority, not a tick box exercise. Whether she's on stage, on a podcast, or coaching one-on-one, Nicola brings a grounded, real-world approach to health that helps women feel strong, focused, and empowered, not just in midlife, but for life. Thank you, Nicola, for taking time out of your day to be here with me.
You're very welcome, and thank you for reading that introduction. It was quite humbling to sit and hear that read out loud.
Of course. Now, Nicola is a very special guest for me because when I was starting out as a new coach, Nicola was one of my first mentors, and I have learned so much from you. So thank you for that. But at that time, Nicola had graciously invited me to be a guest on her podcast, and that was my very first interview. So I'm excited that we've come full circle, and now you're a guest here.
Yeah, me too. And that was such a great conversation as well. I remember you were nervous, but you were so passionate about sharing your personal health story and everything that you'd experienced in your own cancer journey, and why we should check our breasts. So we talked about lots of things that were just so important, and you were fantastic. So you were obviously bitten by the podcast bug.
I didn't know it at the time, but I guess so. So let's get started and tell us who you are a mom to.
Yeah, so I have one daughter. She is 17. She'll be 18 in January. She's called Lois, which in the UK, where I'm from, is quite an unusual name. I think it's definitely more of an American name. Obviously, Lois Lane, Superman's yeah, should we say girlfriend? Yeah, his colleague and peer and friend. And I cannot believe that she's going to be 18 soon. It's gone so fast that it's scary. And of course, she's like my everything, my pride and joy. I know all of our children are, having one, I think just means she gets everything from me. And she's thankfully quite an easygoing child, which wasn't always the case, she would say, but no, she's not, I would say, demanding in the typical way we think teenagers are. She still has a bit of time to go, I think, but hopefully, fingers crossed.
Nice. I know, and time does fly. It goes so fast. But hopefully as an adult, she'll become one of your best friends. So
I hope so.
All right. Well, tell us a mom story that you have.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and just to kind of start, I don't know if other guests have said this to you. It felt quite sad because I was struggling to remember specifics. Like I've got lots of memories and of course lots of photos and videos with having a mobile device. But when you try and hone in on something really specific, that's when it becomes quite scary because you think, wow, all of those years and times I know we've shared have gone in a flash. So I have lots of memories, but I think I'm going to go back to when she was a toddler, probably around that two, terrible two, and share a terrible two story because, as I said, she is quite easy at the moment. But when she was a baby, and definitely, I think once she started to walk and got to maybe about 16 months, her true personality definitely came out. She had been quite a volatile baby, I would say, like, you know, lots of screaming, crying. She wasn't one of these babies that was very passive and didn't scream. I know there's some of those about, but I don't think that they're the norm. But Lois got to that terrible two type of age, and she knew exactly what she wanted and, you know, where she wanted it and when she wanted it. And one of the memories that I do have, which I often talk about with her, is how going to the supermarket used to be a real challenge. She wouldn't sit in the trolley, you know, and I was taking her on my own. So I needed her to sit in the trolley while I did the food shop. But, you know, there'd be tears, tantrums, and I would say, come on, I'll get you a donut, I'll get you a cookie or something like that. And I used to go to this mother and baby kind of support group locally. And the nursery nurse there, when I was telling her about this behaviour that I was struggling with, had said, well, you do realise that when you give her that treat, you are actually rewarding that behaviour. And I hadn't thought about it in that context. And obviously now what we both do as coaches, we can nod and go, yeah, that's training the mind to know that. But at the time, you just want an easy life, no screaming and crying and everybody staring at you in the supermarket. So I thought, right, okay, I'm going to stop this. And she'd given some advice about ignoring the behaviour. So the occasion I always remember is being in the supermarket in the refrigerator aisle. So it was very cold. And she was just having this tantrum. And so I took her out of the truck because she was trying to stand up, you know, and arch their back and so on. And you almost like fighting, sit down, trying to force their bodies into the little seat area of the trolley. So I took her out and she just lay on the floor. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to ignore and do what Linda, this nursery nurse, had said. So I just kept walking and shopping, and she was literally screaming on the floor, but realized quite quickly that I wasn't giving her any attention and I was actually walking away. Now, I was never going to leave my child. So there was no neglect there. You know, I was kind of, is she all right? But literally a few feet away from her. And I could see this old man looking as if to say, you've just left your child there on the floor, and she's screaming. But me knowing, no, this is behaviour that happens in the car seat, going somewhere in the car, the supermarket trolley, sometimes the pushchair, you know, she has to learn that if I want her to sit somewhere, she's going to have to sit somewhere, and I'm not going to give her a donut or a cookie to force a hand at sitting down. And so yeah, she just screamed and screamed, and I felt so sick inside, but was testing myself as well. Be like, no, just ignore her, and just, you know, pretended I was, oh, what do I need from there? What's that there? And ignoring. And then literally within a few minutes max, she'd come running, and then she was kind of, you know, holding onto my leg and started to settle down a little bit. And that kind of way of, I know it probably discipline's too strong a word, but just I guess that way of trying to manage her behaviour became something that I adopted even from that young age, which I know my parents used to turn their noses up to and say, oh, she's a baby, you know, just leaving. I used to watch Super Nanny. I think you had Super Nanny, the reality show as well, where you are, I think, with the same British nanny who used to be featured on the program. And so the whole naughty step routine, you know, but just that element of not reacting to the behavior and or trying to stop the behavior, like let them express their emotion, but also don't kind of end up rewarding by default their behavior in the way that you go to them. So yeah, she always had that very strong, determined temperament and knew what she wanted. And she's very black and white still now. She knows what she wants and needs. Thankfully not with those tantrums anymore though.
Nice. I have the opposite problem. My son's older. He's you know, from the time he was 6, 7, 8, now he's 12. But he's my helper. So sometimes in the summer, if he's home from school, I'll say, "You want to come to the grocery store with me?" And he'll say, "Okay." And he'll push the cart and this and that. And I'll say, "You know what? You helped me. So why don't you pick out a treat that we could take home for you and your brothers?" So yeah, he gets one for helping me
Oh,
out.
nice.
So let's talk about your story for a minute. I like that you first had to become aware of her behavior, right? And then somebody had to point that out to you, that you're rewarding a negative behavior. And then you had to really control yourself to try to put in a new behavior, right? Both for you and for her. And how was that? How did that make you feel?
It was very different for me because I was brought up in a family where anger was the form of discipline. And I was never taught as a child to apologize. I was never taught that when you were told off, like what the reason was. You weren't always explained. It was, the parent, and both my mum and dad were very similar, actually. I think my dad had a much stronger temper than what my mum did, but they were both very aligned in their approach to discipline. So I'd grown up with a very different way of being. And actually, while I was pregnant, I'd done some work through the job that I had in corporate with a business psychologist for my own personal development. And this was the very first time I started to hear about limiting beliefs and how we're programmed as a child. And it was great timing being pregnant to think about how I wanted to be as a parent. And my own temperament, because of that upbringing, was one that meant I'm not someone who naturally has a lot of patience. I'm not embarrassed to say, I can lose my patience easily. I can be quick-tempered. I can be irrational in the moment. I can get heated and angry because I was taught that as a child, and that's what I knew. But I'd already made a decision whilst being pregnant that I wanted to be a different parent, because I'd started to do some work on how that upbringing had affected me, and I was struggling with some mental health problems, and we kind of started to piece things together. So I already had this kind of intentional awareness about I don't want to be that same parent who reacts, who shouts, because like I say, as an individual, I did really have that personality. And so having that help from the nursery nurse supporter was great, because that helped me to kind of take what I was already trying to do and think about and the type of mum I wanted to be, and put it into context for an exact situation. And so I think I already had these little kind of lights lit up around, oh, what you do and say to someone programs them to become a certain type of person. And I don't want my child to be programmed in the way that I was. And I know when we all talk about this, it can feel like we're criticizing our parents and saying they did the wrong thing, but that's all they knew, that was their upbringing and their life at the time. So yeah, it felt good to feel like I was creating a different way of parenting, but it also felt uncomfortable because, as I say, my natural self reacts. Like I can feel that adrenaline kick in very quickly. I can get quite annoyed. Like I can feel my mood shift easily. I'm still that way today, but I just have a lot more self-awareness, and I have retrained myself to have some different, programming. But all of the original programs still there underneath. So, I wasn't a perfect parent at all. There were times when I would get angry and just be like, get in the trolley, and then afterwards you think, oh, why did I do that? I'm supposed to be being calm. But that in itself is fine, because then you can realize and reflect and go, oh, that time I wasn't quite how I want to be. And so, yeah, it was just all about, I think, as you say, that awareness to begin with, and then intentionality, and just having space to reflect and tweak what you might do differently the next time that happens.
And every day is a learning process, right? I think we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think because I only had one child as well, and obviously I know you've got more than one, and I think that you hear people say how differently it is for your second child, especially, but then even the third, like you
Yeah.
relax the rules and the structure, maybe, you know, you've learned so much more. And that was something I used to feel quite sad and a bit, I think, a bit melancholy about, because I think, oh, I wish I could have had another baby just to have put what I'd learned that first time into practice even more so, and you know, really built on those initial first child learnings and experience.
I'll tell you, as a mom of three, each child was so different that what
Yeah.
I did with one did not work with the other, and I had to relearn everything. um, but let's fast forward. So now you said she's at least an easygoing teenager, but a lot of moms who are going through perimenopause have hormonal struggles, right? And they also have a teenager in the house who are also going through some hormonal struggles. So how would a mom in midlife balance all of that hormonal mess in the house?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, over the past 2 and a bit years, especially, my perimenopause symptoms really did ramp up. And over the past year, in the UK, our children finish formal school at 16, and then they can go on to further education in college or as an apprentice. But, you know, at 16, they're essentially free. You know, it's very different to your school system in the US. And when she left school last year, I saw a big shift in how she was as a person, because it was like, suddenly I can choose what I want to do, and I'll eat what I want to eat, and I'm not going to do this, and so on. And that coincided with my own hormonal changes ramping up, and some of my more challenging symptoms have been the emotional dysregulation and low moods and emotional reactions and things like that. And so yeah, it's been challenging for me, and I've really had to reflect on this, because it feels like a whole new stage of parenting. And there've been times when I've thought about how I was as a parent when she was younger, like in that example, and thought, oh, I feel like I've just, everything started to, you know, tear at the seams, and I've just lost control of the way that I was as a parent. I felt like I did such a good job for all of those years, and why am I now like this? Like, why have I shouted at her? And you know, why have I said things that I really didn't want to say, and as a mother ever, to my child, and what happened in that moment? And so I think the first thing, always back to awareness, is that would be my piece of advice. You know, begin with self-awareness of how you're feeling, and share that in your family. I've talked about this on my podcast. I had my husband on, and I couldn't persuade Lois to be a guest. She thought it was very cringy to come onto a podcast, but I did interview her before the podcast and took some notes. And you know, what she said about having that understanding of what I'm going through, what's changing. I think it's so important to reflect on that yourself, but then to share that within your family, which for many families might feel uncomfortable. You might feel embarrassment and even some shame. I think there's still this perception in many families that it's the mum that holds everyone together and is, you know, the cornerstone of the family. So for you to say I'm struggling or not feeling my best at the moment, you might feel like you're going to let everyone else down, but we have to put our own oxygen mask on first. And I think sharing that is a great way to put it out there and start to get the support. But also, I think it helps you to acknowledge that, okay, maybe I'm a bit different at the moment, and you know, my children, even if they're quite young, know about this. But you're right, in terms of having teenagers alongside perimenopause. My daughter, you know, is literally gone through her a second half of adolescence, really, as I've been going through my perimenopause. And so, yeah, we've had clashes together. And I think a daughter and mother tend to have those kind of clashes because of the hormonal, you know, impact that's going on with both of them. So I think just sharing how you're feeling is really important, and being kind and compassionate to yourself in every sense, it matters, but especially when you are navigating all things menopause and midlife, because we can be our harshest critics, and that isn't fair to us. So, you know, if you have lost the plot a little bit in front of the kids, and you didn't mean to, and you know your hormones are all over, then just be kind to yourself and say, I'm human, you know, this is a difficult time that I'm going through. And so I think, yeah, putting it out there, including everybody, being really open, asking for support, giving yourself support are the kind of tips I would share.
Yep. So for a mom who's struggling with a lot of perimenopausal symptoms, and you're a coach for, menopausal, perimenopausal women. So what do you say to that mom who hasn't been taking care of herself for many years? Like, how do you restart, right? Taking care of yourself, or helping yourself first.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot in, I'll go practical with the steps, but just to kind of tee it up, I would say the big thing is to work on realizing why you matter and why your health matters. Because if we don't connect with that why piece of why we want to feel better, why we need, more energy or vitality and less stress, whatever it is you're looking for, any change we want to make can be a real challenge to put into place. So really, connecting with, okay, it matters that my children need me, and matters, because I want them to grow up seeing me as someone who is resilient and strong and also human and can struggle and have these times or seasons of life where they don't feel as superhuman, so to speak. So I think that's kind of a premise I would make. And then on a practical sense, start small, because the biggest challenge I see and hear, and you probably come across the same, is I don't have enough time. I can't take care of me. And that perception of time means so many women aren't changing anything to improve how they feel. But there are so many things you can do that don't require extra time as such. You could do some breathing whilst in the shower. Now, maybe you have kids who are running in and out of the bathroom. Maybe the first little tip is lock the bathroom door.
Yeah.
But, maybe it's not the shower. Maybe it's after school drop off on your way to work, or, but kind of habit stacking with something you already do. Maybe it's while you're chopping the vegetables for dinner on an evening, that you could perhaps pop something calming into your ears, and listen to some, not necessarily meditation, but some calming music or a podcast. So there's lots of things that you can do without needing extra time. And that would be the direction I would support someone in going initially, is what are those little small things that might make the difference now? Like, what are you struggling with most? And I know for many women, it's that they just don't feel like they exist. It's like they exist for everybody else, but in terms of them as a human, as a person, as an identity, they don't exist. So it would be, okay, what could you do for you? And maybe it is, that actually when I come home from work, I'm not going to enter the house. I'm going to walk around the block for 5 minutes. And you might get some, what time's dinner going to be? Is that not going to push things late? But I'm just going to take that for me. Or lock that bathroom door and take the privacy for 10 minutes while you have a shower and get ready. So it's making it really small, because when you think about it in a bigger sense, it's going to be so difficult to try to just get from like A to Z right away. And that normally holds people back from doing anything. It just puts you into freeze mode.
Yeah. And I totally agree. You have to take it one thing at a time, because if you try to change everything at once, I get overwhelmed too, but everyone else gets overwhelmed. They quit. They say, oh, this isn't for me, and having gone through that, where I lost my identity, I didn't feel good, I wasn't taking care of myself, to now where I do take care of myself, I notice such a big change. And my kids notice it too. They'll say, Mom, you don't yell as often as you used to, right? Or that you don't forget things as much as you used to. So I see a difference, but they definitely see a difference too.
Yeah, and that's like full circle to what I shared about realizing while I was pregnant about how we're programmed as children with our upbringing and the role models we have right across our lives, not just our parents, at a young age especially. But yeah, so what they see is what they will do. And do you want your kids to see you rushing around all of the time, being stressed, reacting to things being quite volatile, always saying you're tired, which is the norm for lots of families and mothers. So yeah, thinking about it in terms of maybe putting them first, because it's like, oh, if I do this, actually this is for them, not for me. And then eventually you can overcome some of those feelings of perhaps guilt and selfishness you might worry about initially.
Yep. So now for the moms or women in general who are struggling with perimenopause, you have a new program called From Pause to Play Live. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so it's an 8-week group program, which I'm really excited to run. It's the first time I will have hosted a program in this way, but I've been part of group programs myself. Obviously, you came into the group program I was part of that I'd also done, and there can be such incredible communities to be part of. And that's what I really want, is to bring women together who are at that midlife stage, who have kept all of the balls juggling for probably all of their adult life, and know they're just about keeping them up in the air, and know it's, a real struggle, but think this is just the way it is. I'm managing, it's okay, I can keep going. But as their hormones start to shift, when perimenopause kicks in, they realize those balls are about to come down at any moment, and they can feel that the stress of juggling feels a lot. And maybe some of them balls are career related, parent related, caring for older parents, could be financial, the health and symptoms that we can all experience in menopause. I think it's so important to, at that point, really put yourself first. And this program is going to help women to know what's going on, why we change, why we have some of the mental health issues we have in menopause, as well as physical changes, how it impacts our longer term health, and then get into the nitty gritty of what habits can you build to feel good, to thrive in that second half of life. And as well as me giving them the information across the 8 weeks of the program, they will work as a group and support each other. And that's where there's a lot of power as women, because one of the things I find, especially when I run corporate sessions, is even though these people work together, they haven't talked about this stuff. And as people start to share their stories and experiences, it validates your experience and struggles. And there's so much in that as women. Most of us, if you think back to pregnancy, most of us experience things during pregnancy that we weren't aware were going to happen, or in the birth itself. And we didn't have communities to necessarily talk about that with, ahead of it happening, and then even afterwards. And definitely with menopause, it's been such a closed subject. And I think even not just menopause itself, but that whole stage, the crossroads, if you like, of midlife, that can feel really daunting, because you think, well, wow, I'm 50 next year. I'm probably halfway or more than halfway through my life, which is really scary. And I think without the menopause symptoms themselves, that midlife realization is a lot for most women. And so it's just about helping women to have that space to really create a second half of life that's the one they want to live and look back and be proud of. So yeah, it's a live coaching program, as I say, for those 8 weeks. And I've got some great bonus guests as well on other topics like living alcohol free and brain health and happiness. So, lots of different tools to share and help people build whatever habits work best for them.
Nice. And I definitely support the community bonding that happens in any group program. And again, you get to hear shared experiences. You know that you're not alone. So I think that's all really great. So I will put the link for your program down in the show notes. Now for our midlife women, and like you said, we are juggling our own hormonal symptoms. We got teenagers, we have maybe retirement or career changes, we have aging parents. I think this is like the age where everything comes together. So I'm glad that you're helping and working with the moms like that. Now, where can people connect with you?
I would say Instagram is probably the best place. If you are a social media user, you can find me on there as Life Now Coaching. And also, as you mentioned, I have the podcast, Women's Health Unwrapped. So if you're not on social media, check out one of the podcast episodes, maybe find Amy's episode and start with that one. And yeah, I'm always delighted to hear from people who say, oh, I heard you talk on a podcast and I loved what you shared. So give me a shout if you do want to find out more about what I do.
Nice. Great. So check out Nicola's program, check out her podcast. And again, I'll put all the links down below so that people can find you. Thank you, Nicola, for being here. This is so great.
Yeah, it's been great to chat, and I love this kind of topic. It's something that I think is just really nice to talk about, especially when your kids are older and you maybe don't feel as needed as a mom as well. So I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you struggling to be the best mom you can be? Are you fatigued, overwhelmed, and stressed out? Are you losing precious time with your family because of PMS? If so, sign up for my free gift on how to start living in tune with your monthly cycle. The link to get it is in the show notes below. Use this guide to help you start to eliminate your symptoms of PMS, increase your energy, reduce stress, and fully enjoy this incredible mom life. The way I see it, you have 3 choices. You can try to figure it all out on your own. You can do nothing and stay where you are, or you can get the customized guidance you need to thrive as a mom. The choice is yours. Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you learned something from these stories. If you enjoyed this show, please make sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. It really helps this show grow. If you have a mom story you would like to share, click on the link in the description below on becoming a podcast guest. Remember, the content on this podcast is for general information only. It does not replace any medical advice given by your healthcare providers. Please check with your doctor if you have any questions about your specific condition and before starting any new diet or exercise regimen. Thank you, and you will hear from me soon.